That was Edward F. Kelly, a pioneer in the area of parapsychological research. You know, I think his work is fascinating, yet there's a very strong skeptical side of me. It's like with UFOs. I want to believe in it. I have to think there are people with what we would consider to be supernormal powers. We should be able to conclude that experimentally, but it hasn't been easy. And guys like we discussed it on the show, Uri Geller, have been debunked, and Houdini used to debunk spiritualists. But I got to think there's folks out there that can really do stuff that is considered extraordinary. I mean, what do you think?
Well, it seems obvious there are these exceptional people, but what's even more interesting to me is, you know, just think of the people we've had on the show. We've had Larry Dossey, we've had Charlie Tart, now we've
Hmm.
had Ed Kelly. These are all people who have been doing research for 30, 40 years, or more, and have adequate training, more than adequate training in the scientific method. They're at reputable institutions and so forth. And, you know, they are aware of a body of research that people like you and I just are not aware of.
Right.
So there's a lot of evidence. And I think even more interesting than the exceptional people, I mean, you've met them, I've met psychics and people who have the, you know, ESP and all that. And as Ed said, you know, they're not always people who have their lives together in the real sense of being happy and fulfilled, but they have these abilities. What's more interesting to me as well is that to some degree we all have those abilities. You know,
Right.
we've all had intuitions, we've all had premonitions, we've all, you know, these little glimpses into the world that's beyond rational explanation,
Right.
or
No,
seeming.
yeah, I agree. Certainly, you know, like you, I've spent thousands of hours over the last 40 years in meditation, going inward. And occasionally I've had experiences that were very difficult to explain um, based upon the framework of life and experience that I know. So they were extraordinary. Could they be debunked, or could somebody argue that, you know, they could be produced in a lab? And all? Maybe, but they certainly were very real to me and very convincing. And also, I think we have to be careful, and we touched upon it with Ed. You know, science is something that human beings develop as a procedure for gaining knowledge, but there's nothing absolute about it. There's nothing, you
Right.
know, it's not like the ultimate way to find or discover knowledge. There are other ways to uncover knowledge, and maybe science has its limitations. And like you said, a guy like Ed Kelly, PhD from Harvard, no paranormal experiences himself, so he doesn't have an agenda to promote himself in that regard, and he's just out there looking, and
Hmm.
he's after many years he's even more convinced than ever that these abilities exist. So to me, that's very convincing.
Yeah, and I have two thoughts about what you said. First, I know some people would just say, "Look, science has its limitations, and then there's these other ways of knowing, and we shouldn't mix them up." But other people say we can take the attitude of science and the sort of principles of science and apply them to these other areas we normally think of as spiritual or internal aspects of consciousness. But to do that adequately, we have to expand the definition of what science is so that it includes what we think
Hmm.
of as introspection and the inner experience of individuals, and find other ways of being methodical and rigorous about inquiry that don't necessarily match, the needs of materialistic science.
Right.
I mean, that's another aspect of it. And the other is, I mean, what is all this talk about parapsychology and everything? It's easy to get wrapped up in, do these phenomena exist? But the other question is, why bother? Do they make us happier? Do they tell us anything about human nature? Do they reveal anything about who we are and what the purpose of life is? Well, if they do, we can take those insights and open doors into the larger, more important questions of life. then it's relevant. Otherwise, it's just another mind game.
Right. I mean, say there is some uh, of these abilities that certain people have, and then I think they have to look at, is there a way to develop these abilities in other people? Is there some
Yeah.
usefulness to be gained by it? I think during the Cold War, and the military in the United States and Russia looked into a lot of this parapsychology. There was a movie made about it, and they maybe got mixed results, but they wanted to apply it, to get advantage militarily over other countries and
Right.
whatnot.
Right.
But certainly there's better uses for it, and as human beings evolve, certainly some of these abilities may become more commonplace, and systematic ways of developing those abilities may also unfold. And I also think with refined machinery and equipment and whatnot, there'll be greater ability to actually look at it from a scientific point objectively, but the ability to look at it objectively and to prove it in terms of science uh, doesn't, if science can't do that, it doesn't negate the reality of it or
Right.
people's experiences, direct experiences.
Right. And the other thing that I alluded to with Ed is the whole history of spiritual teachers and teachings. From whether it's Buddha or any of the gurus we're familiar with, or any of the mystical traditions, they all stand by the fact that these phenomena exist.
Mm-hmm.
You have in Patanjali all the superpowers, cities delineated. Buddha famously, would not deny the existence of these things, but he said, "Why bother?" Essentially, they're not relevant. And all the teachers did that. I'm working on this biography of Yogananda, and he was talking about these what we think of as superpowers, the powers of the mind. It's all throughout the autobiography of a yogi. He used to talk about it in his lectures, even have demonstrations of it. But then at the same time, he would say these can be distractions from the
Right.
true purpose of spirituality, of finding fulfillment and self-realization. And so it sounds like a mixed message, but the thing is, these superpowers and the power of the mind opens people's eyes to what we really are, and expands their vision of what's possible.
Right.
So
And modern psychology from the beginning has always said we're using only a small fraction of our brain. Yeah, there can be much more available to us, much more can be done. Who knows what human beings will evolve to in 100, 200 years from now?
yeah,
Yeah, we've gone from Neanderthals to where we are now. Although, when we look at the current political landscape, it seems like some Neanderthals have slipped through the net. But I'm not
the
going to go there.
Neanderthals have taken over.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I'm not. That's not for us. That's for a political discussion at
The
some time.
revenge of the
Yeah, they're
Neanderthals.
back. They're back, and they're headed to Capitol Hill. But yeah, we shouldn't really go into that and stick more to. We are focused on contemporary spirituality, but this is fascinating. I'd love to have him back on. I'd
Yep.
love to see more of his research. He's at the University of Virginia. I know Duke University was doing a lot of research on
Yeah.
parapsychology, and really the amount of money and research, you know, energies that have gone into it have been minimal. So if
Minimal.
they really got more serious about it, I think we would have a lot more evidence and support. But again, for those listening out there, I'm sure everybody's had some type of spiritual experience or experience of some paranormal event, and can not really explain it to others, but it's very real to them. Certainly, I've had those occasions, and I think like there's got to be something to this. And so, not to allow science to negate our own experiences, and not feel that that's the ultimate criterion for whether something's real or not.
Mhm. I agree. Well,
Well,
we'll look into it further in the future.
another terrific show, and we have many more terrific shows lined up, and they'll all be posted at spiritmatterstalk.com. Please tell your friends about us for us to continue to stay on the air and produce shows. We want and need more listeners. So our numbers are growing, and we want them to continue to grow. And our goal is to really educate people about all areas of spirituality. And Phil, one word on you mentioned that you're working on this biography of Paramahansa Yogananda. Can you
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about that?
Oh my God! Well, yeah, I'm working on a biography,
And
and
this is,
it's
by the way, this is June 2016.
right.
And
So when if you're listening to this 2 years from now, or a year and a half from now, you'll probably be able to get the book. But it's a real biography that will go into more detail about his life than he wrote about an autobiography of a
right.
yogi.
And in the meantime, Phil is also featured in the film Awake, which is
Oh my!
yeah, it's a wonderful film. Don't miss it. I think it's available online now and all.
Well, it's just opening in India as we speak.
Great, fabulous movie. So,
Okay.
all right, next time.
Thanks, Dennis. All
Adios.
right. Bye.